was one of the few segregation era structures that we are still using and acknowledging. Okay, that's the other part, acknowledging that it was part of the segregation era. And all the bookshelves you see are original to the building. It was built in 1931.
Oh, wow.
Let me back up. It was opened in 1931. The African American community had requested to have access to the main branch on Government Street. So that was the height of segregation, so naturally that request was denied. The city of Mobile already owned this property, and they had $26,000 left over in a bond issue. And so they built this building with $26,000.
Oh, wow.
They used the same architect that they built the main branch, and they built this one, and here is a superimposed image so you'll have an idea.
Oh, wow. It's so, that's what you were saying, Elizabeth.
It's a miniaturized version of the main branch. Separate but unequal. So this is a 1960s edition, and where we're standing is the most historic part of the building. And as I stated before, all the bookshelves are original.
Wow.
Okay.
From 1930, that's beautiful.
1931, and you know, let's face it, she's had a little plastic surgery, and I strongly advise that if it helps you, yes, I encourage plastic surgery.
We all need a little uplift sometimes.
Whatever, you know, whatever works for you. But the city built this building without having enough money to pay for a librarian or to purchase books. So they went to the Julius Rosenwald Foundation requesting funding. So do you know who Mr. Julius Rosenwald was?
No, I don't.
Ever been to a Sears store before?
I have.
He was the president of Sears and Roebuck, and so it was his foundation.
Oh.
And he, along with Booker T. Washington, built 5,000 schools for African Americans across the United States, of which one is still in use in Mobile County. And that's out in Africatown. Mobile County Training School is a Rosenwald campus, because the actual building burned in 1939.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so, and that's a segue, because I will tie the link Booker T. Washington to this facility shortly. So we'll step over here for the rest of the story. I have to turn the video on. This is an overview of the exhibit. And this is a 1951 index of all the businesses and churches that were located in this community. This was the Black Business District. I discourage people using the term Black Wall Street, because there were no financial institution in this community until the late 60s, early 70s. So we don't quite qualify in the real sense of Wall Street, but it was a thriving Black business district. And not all of the businesses were owned by African Americans. Jews, Lebanese, white people had businesses in this community. But it was predominantly African American as ownership and management, okay?
Oh, wow.
So this is a 1987 photograph of a city employee changing the name from Davis Avenue to Martin Luther King Avenue. Have any idea why it was called Davis Avenue? Just make a wild guess.
The person that started this street, that started the land?
Well, yes, since you're from Alabama, you can relate to it. It was Jefferson Davis.
Oh, Lord.
Because where you are was a Confederate encampment site. And the Confederate soldiers had slaves and body servants that addressed their domestic needs. And when the Civil War ended and the Northern troops moved in, though those people were freed, they just transitioned over and performed the same duties for the Northern troops.
Wow.
And eventually, when Mobile was no longer occupied, they were the first settlers in this community.
Wow.
So, but it still retains the name of the campground. It's all on the maps, the city maps and everything. So it still retains that designation, and it has been historically marked as the campground.
Wow.
Okay?
Beautiful.
So this is a photograph of this building when it was a lending branch of the public library.
Wow.
So remember that when we were free, African Americans, we never got our 40 acres and a mule. Where are you?
That's right.
We never got our 40 acres and a mule. So therefore, when we were free, we didn't have any property, no land. And so Southern Whites still owned this property. And they began to build these little shotgun houses all through this community as rental property.
Got it.
Guess what? Some of them are still in use now, and they're building new ones right here on Congress Street that you can purchase for $219,000. So it gives new meaning to a shotgun.
Seriously.
Yes, but anyway, you'll see there's still quite a few of these in this community, even though urban renewal took a lot of them, okay? So
Wow.
this section of the exhibit talks about urban renewal and its effect on this community. It was a federally funded program designed to get rid of blight, and there was a lot of blight in this neighborhood. Several reasons contributed to it. First of all, the city of Mobile never made the investment in this community that it was due. There was a high number of absentee landlords in this community. And of course, we don't like to talk about it, but the effect that integration had on traditional African American communities, it was a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
That is, with population shift, that's a euphemism for white flight, with the rise of the black middle class, and the federally mandated integration that relieved us of the designation of where black people could live. So we began to move and follow the dominant society.
Wow.
And in doing so, the culture that we had created out of necessity was dispersed. And that's the beginning of us losing our way.
Wow. And what year did that happen?
Hmm?
What year did that happen?
With this urban renewal, the program was from 1949 up to 1974.
Oh, wow.
So I would say in the 60s and the 70s, that's when it really revved up, because then there was no restrictions on where black people could move. You just needed to have some money.
Period.
Yeah, and then at that point was the rise of the black middle class, and we had a little money. So we moved. That was a status. And a lot of people in this community that were black middle class, they moved to Tomanville. And of course, Eric family will be in here. That's a little game we play. I never lived in this neighborhood. I'm a student of the Avenue. I always lived in Tomanville because my mother's family was not considered as African American, and so therefore we were always there. Anyway, this is an example of the things that urban renewal will do to a community. This building once stood right here on the corner, very soundly constructed, nothing wrong with it, but it was condemned and torn down, and now it's the parking lot.
Wow.
And that's the reason why when you go down the avenue, you see so many vacant spaces where businesses and homes once stood.
They just tore it down.
Yeah, and see, the whole idea supposedly that it would encourage investment because the blight would be gone, but the investment never came.
Exactly. They just tore down the buildings and then it was nothing.
So it was two federally funded programs that had adverse effect on communities of color. That's urban renewal and the interstate. And here in Mobile, the interstate sliced and diced down the Bay Area. Urban renewal just wiped out this area.
Wow.
So we got a double whammy.
Seriously.
We really did. But we give credit for one thing that happened during urban renewal, and that is the closure of the Hickory Street dump. See that lady and that little girl? They lived on a landfill and discarded construction materials and cardboard boxes. And when grocery stores had expired food, they would take it there and dump it, and people would pick through it and eat out of it, like a third world situation. So you ask yourself, how could that happen in Mobile, Alabama? Not to make it any better, apparently it happened all across the United States, but all of that predates Johnson's Great Society, and there was no safety net in place for people who were really poor. So they lived the best way they could.
Yeah.
I have no statistics to prove this, but once the dump was closed and they built some public housing, people, some of those people qualified to move into it, but the rest of them scattered to the wind. And I honestly think that was the beginning of Mobile's homeless population.
Yeah.
Some people didn't have anywhere to go. And so we're living with that today. So this section of the exhibit talks about the avenue as being a source of pride, and it was. If you were black and you came to Mobile, Alabama, you came to the avenue. It was the epicenter of black culture in Mobile. This is where all the theaters, the nightlife, the restaurants, the clothing stores that catered to our fashion sense, it was all centered here on the avenue.
Wow.
You see, that is a 1955 streetscape. All those buildings are gone except for Most Pure Heart of Mary Church. And right there where the man and lady are walking, that's across the street at the nursing home.
Oh, wow.
So you see the whole composition of the community changed drastically.
I mean, there was just so much over here. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, it was dense. I mean, this is where the bulk of the African American community lived.
Yeah.
In Mobile. And at that time, we were not a majority city. That only happened in the late 60s and early 70s with white flight.
Black people could come in.
Black people, the concentration of black people outnumbered the white population in Mobile. And we are still in that situation now, even though we don't flex our political and economic muscle as we should. I don't want to get myself out.
I was like, oh, let's be real.
No, don't go there. Not supposed to do that. So remember me talking about Booker T. Washington?
Mm-hmm.
This is this guy right here. And the one standing behind him is C.W. Allen, and the really tall, good-looking guy on the end is A.N. Johnson. Those two gentlemen owned funeral homes all across the South, of which one stood behind this building, which was Johnson and Allen. But the man of the day is this guy right here. That is Dave Patton. He has been dubbed as Mobile's first black millionaire.
Oh, wow.
And he had a construction company, and according to oral tradition, it is his company that laid the foundation to the Sanger Theater. Well, these guys were here on the avenue the week prior to this photograph being taken. And it's identified as circa 1900. I don't have a specific date in 1900, but they were here in Mobile, in South Mobile County, on a fishing trip in Codin, Alabama. I jokingly tell people I didn't know black people could go on vacation, but apparently they were wealthy enough to do that. And they showed it in the way that they dressed. Look at the Panama hats. That one's wearing a bow tie.
Exactly.
And all of them, including the guys, are wearing Stacey Adams shoes. But I just think that they exceeded the fishing limit, though. What can I say? But this is an example of black pride, black wealth that was here on the avenue. This guy right here is Erskine Hawkins, famous trumpet player born in Birmingham, but he's here signing records on the avenue.
Wow.
So this is just a slice of life on the avenue.
And Sheila, how long have you been here? How long have you been doing this?
Oh, I've had several different lives, kind of like a cat. But in my previous life, I worked 21 years for the History Museum, so this is my joy job.
Got it.
The commissioner pulled me out of retirement. She believes in employing the handicapped and the elderly. I feel both of those qualifications. So this section of the exhibit talks about protests on the avenue. Mobile's civil rights participation is somewhat overshadowed by Selma, Montgomery, and Birmingham because we did not experience the level of violence that happened there. But we both lived under the heavy hand of segregation, and we both participated in trying to acquire equal rights. This is a street demonstration that took place here on the avenue by a local civil rights group called NOW. They wanted to protest after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and the city of Mobile would not give them a permit, so they marched anyway. But they did not complete their march because it was met with such heavy police presence that even their leadership became concerned that it would break out violently.
Wow.
So they switched their methods from street protesting to economic boycotting.
Got it.
But this is a demonstration that took place in downtown Mobile in Bienville Square, and I encourage you to read the signs. They tell a separate story. And of course, the Klan marched in downtown Mobile in Royal Street in broad open daylight. But one of the reasons why Mobile's story is somewhat different is because of this gentleman right here, Mr. John L. LaFleur. Mr. LaFleur was the executive secretary of the Nonpartisan Voters League. And he, at one time, was actually the president of the local chapter of the NAACP. But the state of Alabama outlawed the NAACP from operating in the state of Alabama, and the Nonpartisan Voters League took up the helm and continued the work of the NAACP. Mr. LaFleur did not believe in street demonstrations. He believed in negotiating